The following is a Podcast One Minnesota production.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, you betcha, yeah.
If it's made in Minnesota, who's making it and how?
Yeah, you got that right.
It's the Makers of Minnesota, focusing on the products and services uniquely made in Minnesota, and conversations with the makers, entrepreneurs, and innovators in Minnesota about how they conceived of their products and how they brought them to market. With Stephanie Hansen, it's the Makers of Minnesota.
Hi, you're listening to the Makers of Minnesota podcast. I'm Stephanie Hansen, and I am here with Dr. Elizabeth Klotis from Step One Foods, and she's a cardiologist, and she has developed a bar that is called, there's a pecan cranberry, a dark chocolate. It's Step One Foods is the name of the company, and it's a bar that is proven to lower cholesterol. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited.
I'm excited to talk to you because, I mean, I'm a sort of foodie person. I have a radio show about food on my Talk 107.1 called The Weekly Dish, and I read your story and I was like, oh, okay, someone's developed a bar and it's going to be some medical changing life breakthrough, but you actually have done this.
I have.
You have.
I have. And as we were walking in the studio, I was telling you, I think if someone had told me I've been in practice for 20 years. I've been seeing patients this whole time. And if someone had told me in medical school that one day I would start a food company, I would have told them they were crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a big departure from medical school. And yet I would tell you this is the most gratifying and I would say important work I've done.
Well, so let's talk about that. How did you start your journey with Step One Foods? What made you decide you needed to do this?
Yeah. So, as I said, I've been in practice for a long time. And, in medical school and during training, all we're taught to do is prescribe medications. And I was really good at it. I could get my patients' cholesterol perfect, their blood pressure perfect, their blood sugar close to perfect. But what I realized was my patients were never actually getting any healthier. They looked great on paper, but in real life, they were still sick. They looked terrible. They felt awful. In fact, a lot of them were telling me that the medications I had put them on were making them feel worse. And all of a sudden, I realized, wait, I'm missing a whole aspect of care. I'm focused on the downstream effects of poor diet and lifestyle instead of actually addressing the root cause of the problem, right? I mean, in medicine, right, high cholesterol, well, here's a pill. High blood pressure, here's 2 pills.
Has it always been like that? Like, I mean, you're a young woman.
Thank you.
If we look
the lighting is favorable.
If we look at like has in the last 30 years, have we been predominantly more likely to prescribe drugs than to look at lifestyle, or was lifestyle just never a factor all the way along?
I think this has been a problem all the way along.
Okay.
And just to give you a little bit of a sense, like I said, I've been in practice for 20 years. To get trained to be a cardiologist, from the time you leave high school to the time you hang up your shingle, it's 14 years of education. It's a lot of education. How much of that 14 years was spent on nutrition?
I would imagine it's very little, to be honest.
0.
Yeah.
0 hours. And that should be a shock to everyone that's listening to this, because all I do all day long is treat the downstream effects of poor diet. That is ultimately my job. My job shouldn't exist.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, the more I've learned about this, the more passionate I've become. The more passionate I've become, and the more clear it has been to me that we're approaching this incorrectly and at the very least incompletely. There's so much we can do through nutrition that we're not doing.
I'm a breast cancer survivor, and I'm 6 years out, and I can remember getting chemo and sitting in the hospital and, them bringing me lunch. That was like the least healthy lunch in the history of lunches. And then asking my doctors afterwards, like, are there things I can be doing nutritionally? And, they were so cautious. They're so nervous about recommending anything nutritionally, or if you are taking vitamins, let's say, how are those going to react to the drugs that you're taking? And I ended up being a cardiology patient because I was having some adverse reactions to some of the drugs I was on that were impacting my heart. And I kept saying, there's something not right. Like, I can't breathe. I'm a marathon runner. I cannot breathe. And finally, I was at a left ventricle ejection fracture that was so low. They were like, yeah, this is an issue. We need to put you on a pill that's going to help support you while you get through this
Heart
treatment.
function, yep.
Yeah. But the idea of high cholesterol, can we just talk about cholesterol for a minute?
Sure.
Because you are watching for high cholesterol. You're watching for high blood pressure. I'm not a doctor. I'm a nobody. But I am convinced that high cholesterol, while not a great thing, that it is based in your nutrition so much more than it is based. I mean, obviously you may have a predisposition based on your genetic factors.
Yep.
Is there any study or talk that cholesterol may be linked? We know that animal fat supposedly produces cholesterol. Has there been any discussion about that added sugars might be producing cholesterol?
Oh, well, you've hit the nail on the head. It's, people think that it's the cholesterol in their diet that causes high cholesterol in their blood. And that's not the case. It is the overall composition of the diet that influences cholesterol levels in the blood. And actually, one of the highest drivers are added sugars, processed foods, simple carbohydrates. So it's all about how we metabolize food. So, for example, a bagel. It doesn't have added sugars, but it is a very simple carbohydrate. All the complexity of the wheat's been taken out, right? The bran's gone, the germ's gone. It's just the innermost starchy part of the flour that's been fluffed and baked, refined, and it's delicious and it's lovely and it smells wonderful when it comes out of the oven. But when we eat it, it is so nutritionally simple that it takes nothing for our body to digest it. And so it's digested very quickly and absorbed very quickly, and it gets absorbed. Carbohydrates are absorbed as sugar. And when blood sugar levels go up, insulin levels go up. Insulin is a storage hormone. It's there to make sure that all the sugar gets put away for future use. But it pushes our body into storage mode in general. What's the storage form of cholesterol? LDL, bad cholesterol. LDL levels go up. What's the non-storage form of cholesterol? HDL, good cholesterol. HDL levels go down. What's the storage form of sugar? At some point, we run out of places to store free sugar. And the body says, well, what am I supposed to do with all this extra sugar that's floating around the bloodstream? Oh, I know. I'll turn it into fat. And so triglyceride levels go up. Some of the worst cholesterol profiles I have seen are in people following a low-fat diet. But it's not just that it's a low-fat diet. It's also a simple processed carbohydrate diet, right? Low-fat cookies. You think you're doing the right thing, but you're actually causing the opposite reaction of what you think you're trying to achieve.
I'm so vindicated to hear you say that because my mother-in-law has high cholesterol and has genetically had it. Everyone in her family does. Yeah. And they're always trying to put her on drugs. And she has a really healthy, clean diet. She basically eats meat and vegetables and fruit with an occasional bit of chocolate or a glass of wine. Yeah. And she's been trying to diet. She's 85, trying to lose a couple pounds, and her cholesterol has gone way down. And I said, because I bet you have been much more careful about your sugars.
Absolutely.
And she was just like, I don't know. And I've always thought cholesterol had so much of a reaction to sugar versus just the animal fat that we'd heard.
But I do need to clarify something because I don't want to sow confusion. There's a difference there's sugar and there's sugar, right? So sugar in an apple doesn't have the same effect as sugar in a can of soda. Right. It's also about the origin of the sugar and the delivery system, right? Yep. So if you look at a nutrition panel from an apple and a bag of gummy bears, it's actually pretty similar,
Mm-hmm.
like, sugar level, but completely different impact of those nutrients inside your body. Why? Because the sugar that comes with the apple comes with a lot of other stuff. It comes with a lot of fiber and antioxidants and
Mm-hmm.
micronutrients. And the fiber especially makes it much harder for the body to digest the food,
Right.
which means that, yes, you still absorb it, but instead of these huge peaks and huge insulin spikes, it's low and slow. And so what you want to eat is you do want to eat carbohydrates. They're important.
They give you energy.
They give you energy. All the vitamins, all the micronutrients, fiber, that all comes from carbohydrates. It doesn't come from meat. It comes from plants.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that diets that contain a lot of plants are intrinsically much more healthful. If you look at communities around the world where people follow a whole food plant-based diet, their health outcomes are completely different than ours. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they have 1/4 the rate of cancer, 1/3 the rate of dementia, 1/5 the rate of heart disease, 80% less than we do. Like I said, my job shouldn't exist.
Right. So you take that job and you wake up one day and decide, wow, I'm, at the tail end of this trying to cure something. And what made you decide to create a bar of all things? Because bars sort of are associated in, with the Slim Fast bar and all the diet bars of the day.
Yeah, so I actually started on an education campaign. I started talking to my patients about their diet. I started counseling them on, how, cooking and recipes, and here's a website and here's a resource. And I found a couple of things. Number one, the people who could do it, oh my gosh, their health was transformed. I mean, medications list shrink, diagnoses melt away. They are cured.
Mm-hmm.
And, and ultimately that's what I went to medical school for, right? Is that to cure people, not to create this, never ending revolving door of follow-up visits. The problem was the number of people who could make the correct changes in their diet to actually get to that effect was tiny. And what became so clear to me is that you have to be realistic. You have to meet people where they are. People are busy. We have so many other things going on in our lives, me included. I talk about this and I counsel patients, and I started a food company. This is hard for me too. I would love to cook all the time. I don't always have time to do that. So this is about meeting people where they are and making it simple and really straightforward to obtain the nutrients you need to impact cholesterol profiles. So, all these foods were therefore created with convenience and effectiveness in mind, and taste. They have to taste good, otherwise people won't eat them. But it's really about scientific formulation, precise levels of whole food fiber, omega-3 fatty acids, antioxidants, and plant sterols known to positively affect cholesterol profiles and heart health outcomes.
So you started marketing these bars that, if I'm to believe the science, is I would eat one for breakfast or one for lunch. Do you recommend two a day?
So the entire line actually has 7 products. So there's 3 bars. I brought a couple of here that they're in the studio, but it's so 3 bars, and then we have an instant oatmeal, a sprinkle, which is like a raw ground granola that you can put over yogurt. There's a pancake mix and there's a smoothie mix. So, and all interchangeable in terms of their nutrients of interest. So you can pick whichever you like, whatever fits your lifestyle and your taste preferences and texture preferences the best. And then the idea is for cholesterol lowering, yes, it's 2 servings a day of any of those products. You can mix and match as you like as a substitute for something you're eating already.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not an ad, it's a change out. And typically most people will change out breakfast and snack because that's just naturally where these products fit in.
And when you told, your colleagues, like, I'm going to create this bar that's going to do this, what I thought was so amazing about your company is it's legitimate. It works. It's not if you do this, you'll have a better, it legitimately works.
It legitimately works. And we give 100% money back guarantee. If it doesn't work for you, we'll give you your money back.
Right.
And we haven't had to do that yet. obviously, look, I'm a scientist. I can't sit here and pretend that it's going to be this magical thing that's going to revolutionize, everybody's health.
Right.
But here's what I can guarantee. This is real food formulated specifically based on the scientific data. I mean, we know what to eat. We just don't do it.
Right.
And it's about improving health. And cholesterol happens to be one of the things that's affected. But guess what? If you eat right for cholesterol reduction, you're also eating right to lower blood pressure. You're also eating right to improve blood sugar levels. You're also eating right to lose weight. It's all together. I mean, that's the great thing about food. It's a holistic, it's a holistic solution rather than Lipitor, which is one risk factor for one disease.
Right.
Well, walnuts, chia, flax, and almonds. Okay, let's talk about all the things that that those things affect. It's just a very different approach.
So I read that you did like a public offering and you raised just an enormous amount of money.
Well, it's all relative. We are raising funds right now, and we're very excited. We have some clinical data coming out about our products. We see ourselves as the tip of the spear, kind of leading the charge on a whole new approach to health and healing, and that's therapeutic foods, really using food as medicine. I mean, the whole sort of, when I boil this down, it's, instead of take this pill twice a day, it's like take this food twice a day. And we can measure the effect. We can see how you're going to, respond. It's real, and it's, like I said, it's measurable.
And it's so exciting. If you think about the money that we've spent on research and development for the different drugs that we take, why wouldn't we invest in someone who's just helping us make life simpler with food, that is giving us good result with food?
I can't agree.
More.
It's a curious environment we exist in because from a funding perspective, you can't patent a walnut. Right. So the IP protection, these things that, help value companies and frankly help drive some of the research, right? Because at the end you can end up with a product that costs a lot of money to the end consumer, right? So that you make up the amount you spent on research to investigate this. I mean, this is food. It has to be affordable. Our program costs $4 per day.
Right.
And and that's a substitute. I mean, I can make a cogent argument that it costs nothing because you substitute out your Egg McMuffin and a Snickers bar. We're kind of close.
Well, and you sell only on the internet. Is there a reason for that, or that you haven't broached like the grocery store cycle?
Yeah, so there's a couple of reasons. Number one, it gives us very broad reach, so not being hemmed in by specific bricks and mortar stores allows us to basically, anyone can order online. Number two, it allows us to eliminate a lot of costs along the way. There's just many sort of layers of costs that get added to a food between, farmer to manufacturer to being on a store shelf. And we've eliminated a lot of those because we want to really keep this as affordable as we can. The ingredients in here they're not low cost. I mean,
they're like cranberries, walnuts, seeds, bran, flax seeds. Those kind of...
I mean, our blueberry oatmeal has blueberries. It's not blueberry flavored fruit bits.
Right.
It's blueberries, and that can be really costly.
Right. So you have 7 products now.
Yeah.
Do you see this growing? And at some point, like if you have a patient, do you combine this with other ideas for what they can be eating outside of the bars? Or
sure. So the goal is, I mean, it's called Step 1 Foods. It's not Step 1 to 100. This is a place for people to get started. So it's twice a day. So that means you still have your lunch, you still have your dinner, you still have your beverages. So there can be a lot of room for improvement in other areas. But my goal with this is to help people who have failed before have a success, have a win, with it being really, really simple. I mean, I think part of the reason why people just sort of shake their heads when you talk to them about eat better is, you know, a lot of us feel like we have to be, you know, be yoga practicing vegan triathletes, right? For any of this to like matter. And that's not true. It's the small, little sustained changes that add up to really big results over time, as long as they're the right ones, right? So, and what we've tried to do is just make this really sort of simple. You don't have to think about it. This is the right change.
So are you still practicing cardiology?
I am.
And you're a CEO of this company and you're fundraising. How do you balance your time?
You know, I do wish human cloning was farther ahead. That would make my life much easier. But it doesn't feel like work if you love what you're doing. So I'm busy, but I'm blessed. I all day long I do things I love to do. And like I said, this has been really to take a passion and make it become something real and something you can share with others and then have them benefit from it in the way that I've seen. I mean, you can't even begin to
quantify that. And I feel like you're really at the beginning of this career.
I hope so, because I think there's so much we can do. So even you asked about kind of the number of products. So there is plans for expansion, I mean, you know, both vertically and horizontally. So vertically for the cholesterol space, gosh, we have, you know, prototypes for crackers and puffs and other kind of real sort of convenience foods, because that's what we found people really like.
Right.
And, you know, it's, again, there's a reason why, you know, people like convenience food. They need that, right? But also looking at other conditions. I mean, prediabetes, it affects, you know, 80 plus million people. It's a lot of individuals that need to address their blood sugar through food. You can start looking at very narrow markets like kidney dialysis. I mean, you know, there's someone who needs very, very, you know, circumscribed nutritional, you know, inputs. And they don't really have a great resource, right?
And
so
low sodium foods.
Low sodium. Oh my gosh, don't get me started.
I mean, that feels like a real opportunity.
Yeah, and it just getting to looking at products in the marketplace. I mean, one of the reasons why I did this was because there was nothing I could recommend. And this is another frustrating thing, is seeing the labels on food products, the claims, right? Reduced sodium. What does reduced sodium mean?
Yeah, reduced from what, and what's the baseline, and what's the benchmark?
Right. It's 25% reduction from the original. Well, if you have 1,000 milligrams in a serving of soup and now it's 750, it may now get to call itself reduced sodium. I would maintain it's still terrible for you.
Yeah, and it's really, really difficult for people to understand food labels. And I feel very educated in this, and it's hard for me. So someone that doesn't care as much about food as I do, and it's, you know, you're trying to feed your family and you're a busy mom. My sister has 2 small kids, and, you know, sometimes I'm like, have you looked at the label of that yogurt? You know, really like looked at it. She's like, no, it's, you know, organic. And I hear her struggle, and I understand. It just seems like we could make this a little easier for people too.
Yeah, I completely understand, and I've been fooled. I've picked up the thing of quinoa chips. I'm a saltaholic, so
and don't you feel fooled? Because I always do.
I feel so cheated, and I just feel like such an idiot. And I'm looking at and I get home and I look at the ingredient panel, and the last thing listed is quinoa. It's like, really?
The last thing, yeah, exactly. And my husband will say, like, you know, why are you buying XYZ? It's got all this stuff in it. Like, it does? You know, I thought I looked. You know, you're trying to be a conscious consumer, but.
Yeah. So I read somewhere that the average consumer takes 3 to 5 seconds to make a buying decision in the grocery store. Well, you can't possibly analyze everything that you're purchasing, which is why it makes so much sense to shop the periphery, right? If you just shop, carrots and broccoli and peas don't need nutrition labels. We know they're good for us.
Right. It's real interesting to meet you, to talk with you about what you're working on here. Step One Foods is the product. You can order it online at step1foods.com. Any of the 7 products that you have. I'm very excited about this. This is a really cool Minnesota-made company. I like that you are here. I like that you're on the path. I think you are just going to knock it out of the park here. I mean, honestly, I just, the idea that we can heal ourselves with food, and that if we just teach people what to do and make it a little bit convenient for them, even just finding healthy snacks, this would be a great healthy snack.
Oh,
even
absolutely.
if you didn't have high cholesterol,
absolutely.
It would be good for athletes or people to throw in a lunchbox. So, Elizabeth, thank you. I should call you doctor. Thank you for being with us today, and good luck, because I just think the market for this is vast and needed.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure.
Thanks.